Hello YouTube. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of my Scandinavian series. This is part 2 for the Scandi. It's after e4, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, and today we're going to be exclusively focusing on the retreat queen to d8, and then of course d4. Now the reason that black will usually play a variation like this is he's trying to get to a French defense type position without having to play the French defense move order. So he doesn't want to play e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, d4, knight e4, and get to it from this move order for whatever reason. Maybe he wants to avoid the advanced variation of the French. So that's why they play this move order with e4, d5, and then e takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, queen d8, d4, and then we're here in this critical position. So before we go any further, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It does help out my channel. And anyways, without any more delay, let's dive right into what the possibilities are here. So knight f6 is the main move that people try here because this is staying true to the French defense formation. But there is an alternative here that people can try. People can try the move g6 with the idea of fianchettoing. This is kind of a Robot's idea, or it's an idea to kind of try to turn the Scandinavian into something more similar to a dragon. Now, the opinion of this particular idea hasn't changed very much since it was first introduced by Robots back in 1962. He played this against probably the worst person you could play it against. He played this against Bobby Fischer. And Bobby Fischer dismantled this pretty convincingly. And I don't think even in the last 60 years at this point that the assessment of that game or of this position has changed very drastically. So what he did here was he just approached it the way he would approach a dragon. He lined up his queen and bishop the way he would, very similar to a Yugoslav. He castled queenside just like he would in a Yugoslav, and then he just proceeded to try to trade off the dark squared bishops and just blast the king side. Now, Robots kind of made it easy for Fischer. He did just castle kind of on that wing. He would have been much better off just exchanging and then playing something like bishop f5, and just trying to play the position this way. And I think if you're going to try this in modern practice, this is probably the only attempt. But I just don't understand why you put all this effort into putting this dark squared bishop here simply to have it disappear. But that's just my opinion and the consensus of most strong players. So anyways, so he castled kingside, and Fischer just started attacking the king side, just prying everything open, opening lines, opening files. And he managed to do it in a way where he got absolutely everything involved. He's got all of his pieces ready to go over there. And he just plays g4, just going to crack everything open. Material, he doesn't care about that. He's going to get rid of everything just to open up lines, open up files, open up diagonals, and just play for mate. Robots gets his knight back to f8. This is usually something where we say if you get your knight back to f8, your king is fairly safe. This would be an exception because Fischer is basically ready to attack with his entire army. Once this pawn exchanges, both rooks are going to get into the attack. And of course, all three of these minor pieces are actually very well placed to get into the attack as well. This dark squared bishop is going to go away, meaning all of black's dark squares are weak. You just can't defend against all of white's pieces. So Fischer just exchanges stuff, opens lines, comes in with his queen, and he's simultaneously threatening two different mates when he does this. He's threatening a mate on g7, and he's threatening a mate on h7. And eventually it's just impossible to stop both of these threats because Fischer just keeps building. He does it with tempo, doubling his rooks. And now he's pressuring g7, and he's also pressuring h7, and he can also try to get rid of the knight on f6 with knight e4, and this knight can't retreat to the e8 square because queen h7 is mate, so basically both knights are tied down. So Robots in desperation just gives up a piece, and then just after Fischer takes it, he just simply resigns. So that was Fischer versus Robots in Varna in 1962, and if you want more details on that game, you can look up that game in my 60 Memorable Games, and Fischer gives really good analysis of it. So let's take a look at the other option here. The other option is knight f6. Now the reason people typically play knight f6 in this position, I know I got a lot of arrows on the board here, but I'm going to try to explain, is because they don't want to play e6 because it would trap in this bishop on g4. Now, if they do play e6 instead of bishop g4, you would just proceed with your normal development that you would against this French defense formation. You'd bring this knight to f3, you'd bring this bishop to d3, this bishop would go to g5, and then this queen would tuck in behind this bishop on e2. That would leave you open to castle queenside, and then just continue improving your position naturally. Now, normally people play knight f6 because they want to get the bishop outside of the pawn chain before all this other stuff gets done. So the game might proceed with, say, knight f3, bishop g4, and now we're prepared to play e6 and c6 with this bishop outside of the pawn chain. So the best reply here is to immediately break this pin with the move h3, bishop f3, queen f3, and now, of course, we're putting pressure on c6, so they don't have time to take the pawn on d4, so black is going to play the move pawn to c6. So now the move that I recommend is the move that Carlsen played against Dunjik in Tromsø, Norway in 2014, and that's the move queen d3. So Carlsen's main idea, number one, you need to defend this pawn, but of course he didn't want to do it passively with the bishop on e3, which is an ideal square, so he did it with the queen, and then his idea is he is going to actually, after e6, he's going to play g3, and he's going to develop his bishop to this long diagonal, and then all of his pieces should be ideally placed. Carlsen is really good at this, very good. He's got a bishop pair. It's like giving Carlsen too much of an advantage almost. He has a bishop pair and he has more space, so he has, and with an open position, so he has a perfect recipe to continue to make his position better. So we're going to see exactly how he did this. So g3, knight on b to d7, and then he simply put his bishop on the long diagonal. He castled, he played a3. This is actually a really good inclusion. I've used this move quite often myself in these positions. It's dual purposed. Number one, you're preparing at some point to play potentially b4, b5, but also there's a lot of situations where you actually don't want this knight getting harassed with the potential of bishop b4, for example. So it's got a lot of purposes. It's got a space gaining purpose. It's got a purpose for keeping certain ideas under wraps, if black tries them. It's got a lot of really good uses. It's a excellent move to improve your position if you're not sure where everything is supposed to go yet. So queen c7 and then rook d1, b3, so now he's preparing to fianchetto the other bishop to the long diagonal. Rook fe8, bishop b2. Carlsen just maximizing all of his pieces beautifully. And now look, only Carlsen can do this. After a couple of moves, he's got everything kind of on beautiful looking squares. They're all doing their job. So we'll just watch how the master proceeds kind of with the rest of this. Trades off that dark squared bishop, gets his knight to that powerful f5 square. It's still a symmetrical pawn structure, but Magnus Carlsen has the advantage because he has the long diagonal, he's got a knight on a slightly better square than his opponent's knights, and he's got the open files. So he just slowly and calmly improves his position. Eventually he wins a pawn. Eventually he sacrifices that pawn to create a very dangerous passed pawn that he's already got behind. And notice how everything, it's like magic when he plays chess. Everything is lined up to help it somehow. So he just proceeds trading queens, and then that pawn pushes, and at this point it's almost over. He's about to get that pawn through. He just has to work it. So you can see he's utilizing this advanced pawn. When he plays rook c5, we can't take because we're going to make a queen. So at this point, he's up a clean pawn, and unfortunately, black just kind of collapsed immediately. Black played knight b8, and then rook here, and it's pretty much over. This was Carlsen versus Dunjik in Tromsø, Norway in 2014, and this was, obviously white won this game, and it's a good way to play against this particular formation. So going back here to queen d8. So let's review the options here after d4. They can play e6, they can play knight f6, or they can play g6. So if they play knight f6 or e6, we're going to play our French defense formations. If we play knight f6, knight f3, bishop g4, we're going to follow that Carlsen game with our fianchetto long. And basically, that's about it. That's all that's going on with this Queen D8 retreat. They're either going to try to play a French defense-like position, either with their bishop outside of the pawn chain or not, or they're going to try to play this robots-type position with the pawn on G6, in which case we just slay the dragon in the way Fischer did. So anyways, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. It really does help. And I hope you found this video interesting, and I hope this helps you with your game, and I hope you learned something new about chess. Thank you very much for watching.